If you can pay for the cheapest room, I'll give you the presidential suite.
Samantha stepped out of a rideshare in front of the Grand Regent Hotel, hat on her head, worn leather duffel in hand. She wore a flannel shirt, straight-leg jeans, and scuffed work boots. The doorman didn't budge. At the front desk, the manager, Martin Blake, gave her a slow, dismissive once-over. "Our rooms are a bit premium for your profile," he said, voice smooth as glass. Then came the cruel dare. "Tell you what, if you can pay for our cheapest room right now, I'll upgrade you to a suite." The humiliation was public and sharp. What Martin didn't know was that he had just challenged the wrong woman. Within minutes, the truth about who she really was would make the entire hotel hold its breath. The contrast was stark. Guests were arriving in black Escalades and sleek Porsches, stepping out in tailored suits and carrying designer luggage, while Samantha walked in with a sun-bleached duffel and a calm, easy smile. Her steps were steady. Someone who knew exactly where she belonged in the world. The lobby radiated opulence. Behind a walnut front desk, 3 neatly uniformed receptionists wore their polished smiles. But when Samantha approached, something shifted. The youngest receptionist, Kayla, exchanged a quick glance with her colleague. Her welcoming expression faltered into an awkward half-smile. A blonde clerk in his mid-20s suddenly found himself very busy with important paperwork. That was when Martin emerged from his office. 42, hair slicked back, immaculate charcoal suit, and an arrogance you could see from across the marble floor. He'd worked in luxury hotels for 15 years and prided himself on knowing who did and did not belong. His eyes scanned Samantha like a barcode, calculating value and origin. "Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Follow our channel so you won't miss the next story. Tales of love, redemption, and second chances." "Good afternoon," Samantha said, removing her hat with quiet courtesy. "I'd like a room for 3 nights." Martin's smile never reached his eyes. Samantha knew that smile. She'd seen it at fancy boutiques and white tablecloth restaurants. A smile that had already judged and sentenced you. "Of course, ma'am," he purred. "Do you have a reservation?" "No. I just got in from out of state. Figured I could find a room today." Nearby conversations slowed. An elegant woman whispered to her husband. A businessman in a navy suit stopped scrolling on his phone. The lobby's normal hum narrowed into focus on this unlikely exchange. Martin tapped at the computer with theatrical leisure, like every keystroke was a tiny gavel, building a wall of condescension. "Our inventory is particular," he said, savoring the word. "We only have suites at the moment. They run $200 a night." He pronounced the amount like a verdict. He expected Samantha to retreat, muttering apologies, maybe pretending she'd walked into the wrong hotel. A few staff drifted closer, curious to watch the little drama resolve itself. Samantha hardly blinked, as if the number were perfectly reasonable. "Fine. Book it for 3 nights. The flicker of surprise on Martin's face lasted a heartbeat before it hardened into a more cynical smile. He leaned over the counter, taking territorial posture. "You understand we require guarantees, yes? Major credit card, proof of funds." He raised his voice just a notch so others would hear. "Our guests operate at a certain standard." The sentence sliced the air. Small talk died. An uncomfortable hush rolled through the lobby. Sensing his audience, Martin pushed further. "You know what, friend?" He paused, enjoying himself. "If you can pay for the cheapest room right now, $350, taxes and fees included, I'll put you in the suite. On the house." The effect was immediate. A woman with a designer tote covered her mouth at the crudeness. 2 executives exchanged uneasy looks. A young couple by the elevators stopped cold to watch the public shaming. Even the staff looked embarrassed for their boss, though no one dared step in. Samantha didn't lose her composure. Her eyes, which had seen plenty, met Martin's with a steady calm that irritated him more than defiance would have. "What's the rate for the cheapest room?" she asked, voice level, free of even a hint of humiliation. $350, Martin chuckled, the sound ugly in the quiet lobby. "Due now." He was certain that would end the farce. What he couldn't imagine was that this would become the most expensive mistake of his career. Samantha set her duffel on a nearby sofa. The movement drew every gaze like a movie dolly shot. "What are you doing?" Martin barked, the pitch of his voice betraying a hairline crack of nerves. "Taking a seat," she said, settling in like she owned the place. "I need to organize my documents." The idea that this woman, arriving by rideshare in ranch casual clothes, might actually have $350 cash planted an unwelcome seed of doubt in Martin. He shoved it away. Impossible. Samantha unzipped her duffel. The sound echoed in the hush like a drum announcing battle. Inside, neatly folded shirts, a weathered leather kit, an old-fashioned document pouch. Martin stared, trying to stay cool, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. Samantha drew out a brown envelope and began arranging its contents on the coffee table in tidy stacks. "Oh my," murmured a woman to her husband. "She's counting money." Whispers flared like grass fire. Heads turned. Conversations ceased. A few phones angled discreetly toward the scene. Martin felt a pinch in his chest. His palms went damp inside the invisible gloves of anxiety. "Cash isn't enough," he called, reaching for control. "We'll need ID, a credit card on file, proof of income." Samantha looked up and smiled for the first time, a gentle, almost maternal smile that made Martin feel suddenly, inexplicably small. "Don't worry, son. I've got everything you need." The word son, said with such natural kindness, scrambled his script. Samantha rose and returned to the desk with a neat clip of bills and a scuffed leather wallet. Her footfalls were steady, as if tolling a bell. $350, she said, placing the money on the marble with the same ease you'd order a coffee. "Counted." A low susurrus rippled through the lobby. Martin stared at the 50s and 100s as if they were a snake about to strike. His plan had collapsed like a house of cards, and the worst was still coming. His hands trembled as he leaned in. Is this 350? "Exactly," Samantha said, sliding over her Texas driver's license and a Visa card. "License, card, and here's my business card if you need it." The receptionist, Kayla, drifted closer, curious. Other staff took subtle vantage points, the way people do when a routine humiliation turns into something else. "Where did that money come from?" Martin asked, grabbing for control again. The question cracked the air. People turned fully toward the desk now, abandoning discretion. A woman paused mid-email. A pair of entrepreneurs stopped their low conversation. Even housekeeping staff hesitated with their carts. "Honest money," Samantha said, same soft smile. "Earned the old-fashioned way." "What kind of work?" Martin pressed, desperate for anything to disqualify her and save face. "I'm a rancher." A few guests snickered. Relief washed over Martin. A rancher. Probably sold a few calves and now thought she had the right to wander into a 5-star hotel. "A rancher," he repeated, recovering some swagger. "And what's a rancher doing at the Grand Regent?" "Came for the sale," Samantha said calmly. "What sale?" "Elite Angus and Charolais sires, tomorrow at the Midtown Convention Center." Martin frowned. He didn't know ranching, but pictured dusty county fairs, not Manhattan ballrooms. "And how much do you plan to spend at this sale?" he asked, ladling on the irony. "Depends on the animals," Samantha said, "but I brought enough for a few good sires." "How much is a few good sires?" he pushed. "It varies," she said after a beat. "From the high hundreds of thousands to figures that creep into the low millions depending on bloodline." The sentence landed like a small bomb. Voices dimmed, phones lowered. Attention snapped back to her. Martin laughed, forced and brittle. You're telling me a bull can cost millions of dollars? Top genetics command top prices, Samantha said. And if the numbers make sense, I'll buy more than one. I don't have to believe a word of this, Martin said, gesturing toward her boots. You arrived in a rideshare dressed like that, and I'm supposed to think you'll spend a fortune on cattle. I'm not asking you to believe anything, Samantha said, the calm in her voice firming by a degree. I'm asking you to honor your word. Listen here, Martin leaned in. This is a serious hotel for serious people with serious money, not a place for tall tales about millionaire cows. A few guests shifted, uncomfortable. An older woman whispered, He's being awfully rude. The cash is right there, Samantha said, nodding at the bills. You made a wager. A person of honor keeps a wager. Honor? Martin barked a mirthless laugh. People of honor don't spin stories about million-dollar bulls to look important. Samantha did something no one expected. She returned to her duffel, pulled out a weathered smartphone, and held it up. Mind if I make a quick call? To whom? Martin asked, suspicious. My accountant. He can clarify a few things. He hesitated. Retreat now would be public admission of a terrible mistake. Fine, he said. Go ahead. But when this little story falls apart, you're leaving. Use the service exit. We don't need more awkwardness. Samantha dialed and put the call on speaker. A crisp male voice answered. Good afternoon, Samantha. How's New York treating you? Afternoon, Mr. Roberts, she said. Quick question about tomorrow's budget? Of course, he said, voice carrying easily in the quiet lobby. We have a substantial reserve ready for bids. You asked for comfortable margins. Wires are set. We also have the corporate card for incidentals. Samantha thanked him and ended the call. Silence spread like snowfall. People stared at her as if something extraordinary had just stepped out of thin air. That proves nothing, Martin stammered. Anyone can ask a friend to pretend to be an accountant. It was a weak shot. Guests murmured disapproval. A businessman muttered, embarrassing. You're right, Samantha said, a glint of good-natured mischief in her eyes at last. Words are just words. How about something more concrete? She drew a black leather folio from her bag and handed over a set of papers. Last week's bank summary. Martin's hands shook as he scanned the numbers once, twice, 3 times. 7 digits, beginnings with a 3. Transaction history peppered with 6-figure wires, vendor payments, and equipment purchases that cost more than luxury cars. This could be fake, he whispered, but even he didn't believe it. You're welcome to call the bank, Samantha said pleasantly. Here's my banker's card. Around them, guests watched with a mix of fascination and mortification. That was when the elevator doors opened and an elegant couple stepped out. The man in a razor-sharp Italian suit, the woman in a dress that whispered couture. The man headed for the desk, then halted, catching the tension. What's going on here? He asked, looking from Martin to Samantha. Martin saw a lifeline. Just a minor misunderstanding, Dr. Lawson, he said with a tight, professional smile. Nothing that would impact your stay. The man looked at Samantha, and recognition warmed his face. Samantha Hayes? Samantha blinked, surprised, then grinned. Dr. Henry Lawson? Well, I'll be. They embraced like old colleagues. Martin's stomach dropped. How's business? Henry asked. Heard you made some big acquisitions at the Houston sale. Picked up a few promising sires, Samantha said modestly. The genetics will lift the whole herd. Martin's world tilted. One of the hotel's most valued guests clearly knew and respected the woman he'd spent 20 minutes humiliating. You still breeding those Arabian horses? Samantha asked lightly. Always, Henry laughed. I've got a colt I think you'd like. Al Rashid line. You remember. They chatted with ease, every word a dagger in Martin's pride. The names, the implicit values, the mutual respect. At last, Henry faced Martin, the warmth gone from his voice. "Martin, I trust you're treating my friend with the respect she deserves." "Of course," Martin said, throat dry. "We were just finalizing her accommodation." "What details?" Henry asked, eyes narrowing. Samantha answered for him, calm as ever. "He made a bet with me," she said. "If I could pay $350 cash for the cheapest room, he'd give me a suite on the house." Henry stared at Martin, incredulous. "You made a bet with Samantha Hayes?" I didn't know," Martin faltered. "Didn't know what?" Henry pressed. "That you're dealing with one of the most respected ranchers in the country?" Each word hammered what remained of Martin's professional dignity. The entire lobby watched, riveted. "Easy, Henry," Samantha said, laying a gentle hand on his arm. "He was doing his job, just not the right way." "Doing his job by humiliating guests based on appearances?" Henry shot back. "Martin, do you know who this woman is?" Martin shook his head, defeated. "Allow me," Henry said, voice carrying. "This is Samantha Hayes, owner of Silver Mesa Ranch, a benchmark in cattle genetics. Her stock sells nationwide and overseas." A woman on the sofa gasped. "Silver Mesa. Isn't that the ranch I've seen in those ag features?" "Exactly," Henry said. "Her program is studied in university ag departments." "Please," Samantha murmured, embarrassed by the attention. "That's enough." Before anyone could respond, Kayla approached, hesitant. "Mr. Blake, there's someone who needs to speak with Ms. Hayes, urgently." A man in his 40s, dark suit, leather portfolio, stepped forward with confident purpose. "Ms. Hayes, I'm Marcus Oliver and Associates Auctions. I need a moment about tomorrow's lots." "Marcus," Samantha greeted him warmly. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," he said, opening his portfolio. "We've received some strong pre-offers on sires we know are on your short list. We wanted to give you first refusal before we open broader interest." The lobby seemed to stop breathing. "What kind of numbers?" Samantha asked. "Well above market," Marcus said. "A few lots are already attracting seven-figure attention." Martin had to sit. His legs wouldn't hold him. 7 figures for animals Samantha might buy. "I'll decide after I see the bulls up close," Samantha said. "You know me." "Of course," Marcus said. "You're staying here?" "I can pick you up at 8. Samantha glanced at Martin with a mild smile. "We're just finalizing my room." "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, reading the room in a heartbeat. Henry answered. The manager made a bet. If Samantha paid $350 cash for the cheapest room, he'd give her a complimentary suite. Marcus stared at Martin, stunned. "A bet? With Samantha Hayes?" He let out a disbelieving breath. "You realize she's one of our biggest buyers, right?" The words hit Martin like a punch. "In fact," Marcus added, "her investments at our last Houston sale were remarkable." Samantha lifted a hand. "I appreciate the support, but let's keep this simple." She faced Martin. "You made a wager. I paid the $350. Time to keep your word." "The suite," Martin whispered, voice barely there. "Sorry?" Samantha said with polite clarity. "The presidential suite," he said louder, swallowing. "It's yours." But Samantha wasn't finished. The biggest reveal was still ahead. She returned to her duffel and took out an old, well-kept brown leather case. The lobby fell utterly still, like waiting for the final chord in a symphony. "You were right about one thing," she said, coming back to the desk. "I should have identified myself earlier." Henry and Marcus exchanged curious looks. Samantha drew out an official document, seals catching the light. She offered it to Martin. "You can read it aloud." He stared, color draining from his face. His hands shook so hard the paper fluttered. I can't. Henry took the document, adjusted his glasses, read once, then again, and his eyes flew wide. My God, Samantha, you didn't tell me this. What is it? Marcus asked. Henry cleared his throat, projecting. Certificate of ownership recorded with the city register. The entire lobby leaned in. Owner, Hayes Holdings LLC, property, the Grand Regent Hotel, including building and adjoining parcels, 2847 Fifth Avenue, New York. The lobby detonated in gasps. A phone clattered to the floor. Someone choked on a sip of coffee. Martin stumbled backward, catching himself on the wall. She owns the hotel? Someone squeaked. Samantha, Marcus said, slack-jawed. When did you— 3 years ago, she said, as if discussing the weather. Previous group was in trouble. It was an interesting investment. The world spun for Martin. For 20 minutes, he had mocked and belittled the owner of the very hotel that signed his checks, the person who could end his career with a nod. 3 years, he whispered to no one. Since then, Samantha said, sliding the deed back into its case, I've read monthly reports on operations, guest satisfaction, service quality, team performance. Reports. The ones Martin had written himself, embellished with praise, padded with stories about exceptional service and delighted guests. Very creative reports, Samantha added, smile not quite reaching her eyes. The lobby watched him like he was a rare specimen in a glass case. The humiliation was complete. Ms. Hayes, Martin managed, voice a rasp. I didn't know. Please, Samantha studied him for a long moment, that steady, quiet gaze holding the weight of a decision already made. The lobby held its breath. Martin, she said at last, voice soft but firm. When I bought this hotel, I had a simple vision. Every person treated with dignity, no matter how they look or where they come from. I hired you for your resume. But what I witnessed today runs against everything this place should stand for. He swallowed, speechless. You didn't just disrespect a guest, she continued. You revealed a character that cannot represent this hotel's values. How would you treat a family in their Sunday best from a small town? A retired couple who saved up for a special weekend? He squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, they were glassy. Please, he whispered. I have a family. I need this job. I know you do, Samantha said gently, and that's why I'm giving you a chance. A ripple of surprise ran through the room. You'll transfer, she said evenly, to Silver Mesa Ranch in Amarillo. You'll start as an administrative assistant at a salary appropriate to the role. You'll learn humility, honest work, and what it means to treat everyone with respect. It was punishment and opportunity in one. A demotion, yes, but a door to rebuild. If after a year you show real change, she added, we'll discuss a return to hospitality, somewhere you can learn to serve, not to belittle. Tears of relief and shame streaked down his cheeks. Yes, ma'am, I accept. Thank you for the second chance. Samantha turned to Kayla. Kayla, you'll serve as acting manager for now. I watched you try to stay gracious in a hard moment. That's character. Kayla's mouth fell open. I'll do my best. I believe you will, Samantha said. First decision, a written policy. Here, every guest gets the same respect, no exceptions. It'll be my pleasure to implement it, Kayla said, spine straightening. Henry shook his head in quiet admiration. Samantha, most people in your position would have fired him on the spot. Firing is the easy way, she said. It doesn't teach. He'll learn that real success comes from character, not arrogance. Marcus nodded. This is why you're respected in business, Samantha. You see past the surface. Samantha picked up the cash from the counter and handed it to Kayla. Put this toward a staff training on exceptional service. Let's make sure we never repeat a scene like this. Yes, ma'am, Kayla said, eyes bright. Martin cleared his throat timidly. When should I report to Amarillo? Monday, Samantha said. Ask for Mr. John Rivera. He's 70, and he'll teach you more about leadership than a stack of resumes ever could. Thank you, Martin whispered. I won't waste this. Samantha rested a hand on his shoulder. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. What you do with it is up to you. Henry turned to the gathered guests. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just seen a masterclass in justice, with mercy. Applause swelled. Guests, staff, even a few passers-by who drifted in to see what the commotion was about. Samantha set her hat on her head and picked up her duffel. Shall we go up? She said to Henry and Marcus. We've got a sale to plan, and I still need to review a few lots. As they crossed the lobby toward the elevators, eyes followed not with gossip, but with respect. What could have been petty revenge had become a lesson for everyone in the room. True justice had arrived dressed simply and carried itself with compassion. In the end, the richest person in that lobby wasn't defined by the zeros in a bank account, but by the size of her heart and the way she treated people who had nothing to prove to her. Character isn't something you can buy. It's something you build, choice by choice. Have you ever been underestimated or judged someone by their cover? What did you learn? If Samantha's turnabout made you rethink a few things, tap like and share this story with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a like, and help us keep sharing these moments of hope and humanity. Your presence here means more than words can say. Until next time, stay gentle, stay strong, and keep believing.